This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Well, hello. Paul Catalina and Garrett Ross here with you on Mondays. This is the only time, this and Fridays when the Smokes are here, are the only times Garrett has agreed to host with me. So let's make him feel welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Garrett, it was, I'm curious when the rankings come out tomorrow, and you'll hear Payton Sochier at the end of the show talking about some things that have happened. Now, look, Greg Sankey is getting exactly what he
Absolutely
wants.
is.
That shouldn't be a surprise. But there are 5 or 6 teams that might be able to lay claim to having a good enough season to be in the playoffs from the SEC. But only 4 of them are going to get in. And that's going to start the argument of, well, they have to have automatic, that's going to be the thing. But because they're going to be mad. They're going to be mad at Boise State, but really they should just be mad at themselves.
Right.
But this is going to show what parity does, what all this expansion and everything does to college football. It makes it really, really different. It makes it a lot different. So historical, all that stuff you have to throw out because it's a year-to-year thing. And soon enough there'll probably be a process of picking the playoff that's more akin to what most other people do in playoff-driven sports. But this is going to be so chaotic, and because now my dog is completely out of the hunt. My dog collapsed and is awaiting.
He's Old Yeller.
Yeah, he's Old Yeller. Yeah, he got Old Yeller week 1. Out of the hunt. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I want to see the chaos. Look, if A&M beats Auburn this week and Texas beats Kentucky,
Right.
and then A&M beats Texas, that's going to create a huge logjam at the top. Auburn has the chance to play spoiler for 2 teams. I don't think they're good enough to do either.
No.
Even at home. Kentucky could play spoiler again. If Texas took a loss to Kentucky, then where does that put them in relations to Ole Miss if they do beat A&M in that last game? So there's a lot. There's a lot that is going on that we have to get into that came out of this week. And, some of it is, hey, good news for some teams, bad news for others. Garrett, let's get the bad news out of the way person first.
Okay.
And so I wanted to discuss this with you. Very clearly, your favorite team.
They're awful.
Is not that good.
They're ass. Yes. I told you this coming into the season.
Yeah.
I knew this was going to happen.
Okay, what's worse for you?
Okay.
The fact that you were right, or that for about a month they were proving you wrong?
I would probably the fact that they proved me wrong for about a month, because you gave me some glimmer of hope. You even made me come out on this show, I believe 2 weeks ago, and say I started to maybe turn the corner on Brian Kelly and how I thought about him, because I hated the hire from the jump. And then I think the realization is that I was right. And I think that false hope they gave me was the worst part of it. I think when you look at their offense, they have to have a mobile quarterback. When you have 2 guys on the outside who are first-round draft picks, and your line still continuously collapses, and your quarterback is just a statue, you lead to having 7 sacks in one damn game.
Do you blame me? Look, the Football Writers Association sent me my All-America ballot, which I'd rather not do 3 weeks before the regular season's over. But, they have a timer on these things, and so I understand that. So I did my All-America ballot, and I did put Will Campbell at one of my tackles.
I think most people did, and I think rightfully so coming into the season, right? But I also think that's one of the things where you've got to let things play out, and you can't go off of what we've seen in the past, right? I think we're talking about it for teams. I think the same has to go for players. We saw it with Cam Rising this year. We saw it with Alan Bowman. You could just list off plenty of other people who have regressed. But I remember 3 games into this, and I can't remember what game they were who they were playing. But I remember sending you and Jack and Emery a text and saying, like, asking y'all, like, is Will Campbell overrated? And he's been hit or miss. He's still really good, but, like, he's getting worked. And I think the biggest thing for the offensive line over the past 3 weeks, and I don't know how many people are really accounting for this, but in that game against Texas A&M, when in the first half LSU's offense was rolling, it was late in the second quarter, and Garrett Dellinger goes down, and he was their left guard. When he went down, the offense could not do anything, and it's been that way ever since. They have not addressed it. You've had bye weeks off. It still hasn't done anything. Here are some numbers from Zach Nagy. He covers LSU for SI. Over the past 3 games, they've been outscored 100-35. They have scored 3 touchdowns on their last 27 drives. They've allowed 11 sacks over the past 3 games and 22 TFLs. That is ridiculous. That's unacceptable, especially when you have 2 guys that are anchoring your line that are going to be drafted in the first round. And I know the Dellinger injury is a problem, but at the same time, like, LSU's supposed to be one of these programs where you have the depth, right? Like, if you have an injury like this, somebody steps up, and we're starting to see that they're being hindered the way all these other programs are, where the depth just isn't there because of the portal. And that's great for the players, but we're in a new landscape where programs who don't have the money, like LSU, like Oklahoma, because I feel like they're very similar this year, who just can't throw the bags like your Texas and them. This is the new reality for them, man, and you're going to have to find selective ways. You're gonna have to instead of banking traditionally on getting 4- and 5-star guys in there that you can just hold on to, you're actually gonna have to start developing people. And I don't know that there's guys on this staff that are doing a good job properly developing, especially on defense. And it all starts at the top with Brian Kelly, man. It's a fiasco right now in Baton Rouge.
Well, do you remember who they wanted to hire before they hired Het Orgeron?
Yeah,
Garrett.
I do.
Who did they want to hire?
Jimbo Fisher.
No.
Well, they did. But who else?
Okay, who did they want to hire? They were competing with Texas for a coach.
Sark.
What?
It was Sark.
No.
Who was it?
Tom Herman.
Oh, well, yeah.
You remember,
that was way back. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
We'll go way back. Well, look, if it makes you feel any better, they wouldn't have gotten that one right either because FAU has just fired Tom Herman amid a 5-game losing streak and being winless in the AAC. So
I'm not surprised, but dang.
Yeah. My tease there didn't go well because I forgot of all the different guys they wanted to hire.
It's been a hot mess, bro.
Yeah.
It's been a hot mess.
Brian Kelly there wasn't Brian Kelly they went out and hired Brian Kelly. Steve Woodward wanted Brian Kelly. That's who he wanted as the coach. And he went and got him. That's what he did. He went out and got Kim Mulkey.
Yep. Jay Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. He goes out and gets who he wants as the coach. That's what he wanted to do. And so he went and did that. He did it at A&M with Jimbo Fisher. He did it with Buzz Williams. And then he did it at LSU with Brian Kelly. Mm-hmm. I don't think I just wondered the whole time, all these things were happening to Brian Kelly that you kind of see because we see it more now. Barry Switzer is a cool guy, right? We got Barry Switzer on.
Yeah.
Bob Stoops is cool. Nick Saban is cool. But, we also had enough time. Those guys didn't have all the social media that exists now.
Stuff. Yes.
That's you have to manufacture your cool. And so, look, Deion Sanders doesn't have to pretend to be cool. He's always been Deion, right? And like him, don't like him. You got to admit he's cool. Brian Kelly, you can tell he's trying really hard.
Very hard.
When really he should just X and O and run a program and be a CEO and not worry about its personality. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Kirby Smart's cool.
No.
But guess what? Kirby doesn't care. Kirby's just intense and he's a crazy man for football. That's what he cares about. I think Brian Kelly's got to get rid of that in his personality, and then he'll maybe be free to do things. He also, it's not a good fit. When the defense plays well, and they were playing well against Florida for about 2.5 quarters, or well enough to win. That fourth quarter was a disaster. And I think the fourth quarter was a disaster because they were just cooked because the offense couldn't do anything. But when the offense plays well, the defense doesn't play well. When the defense plays well, the offense doesn't play well. They are totally out of sync there at LSU.
They are, and when the defense does play well, and when the defense comes up with opportunities and the rare time they actually get a turnover and they give the ball to LSU's offense, they know that more than likely you're not getting it past the red zone. Yeah. They are terrible inside the red zone with their offense, and I'm pretty sure that goes back to just having one single running back that you can consistently rely on, who's a freshman, and Caden Durham. Josh Williams isn't giving you anything. I think it's just it's baffling that you're having to rely on so many field goals, and then at this point with Ramos, you don't know if you're more than likely he's going to miss it. And it's just it's a repetitive thing that's over and over again. You've had multiple bye weeks now. And I know you're playing rivalry games and back-to-back situations, but at some point, you've got to figure something out. And if you can't do it, get somebody else in there that can, because there's a lot of money on the line. This is a business, man. It's a business.
He's not. Here's the thing, Garrett. That buyout is enormous.
It's too big.
He's not going anywhere in the next 2 years.
I know.
So I think he can figure it out. So anyway, but we're going to get to playoff stuff here in a sec because Bracket Cat said something really funny. But they've got to figure that out. So we can move past that now, Garrett.
Yes.
Okay? Go home, take a gummy.
Be all right.
Everything will be fine. All right?
All right.
It'll be good. So the Big 12 is only going to get one team. The ACC is only going to get one team.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen. Because more than likely the Big 12 is going to set themselves up where the conference champion has 2 losses, and that's just enough to be like, well, 2 losses in the Big 12 is not the same as Ole Miss's 2 losses or Tennessee's 2 losses or whatever. And guess what? They are.
Yes, they are. It's the exact same thing.
They really are. There are a few schools that can say, well, our losses are better than your losses. Yes, but losses are what they are. Okay.
Exactly. Why are we?
Yeah. Because they're
losses.
You've got too many. There's too many teams that have credentials, right? So you got to find ways to split it. But the Big 12 is a fantastic conference. I mean, as far as games every week, and we got some news that we'll talk about more in depth on 365 Sports. But one of the things I noticed, so I don't know if people have heard about this, but inside the NBA is moving from TNT to ESPN. TNT will continue to produce it and make money on it, which is a huge boon for them. And it's huge for David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, because if he didn't get this worked out, he was going to get fired.
Yeah.
But ESPN will then trade some Big 12 football and basketball and Big East basketball and a NASCAR event, a couple things back to TNT that they will air. And it said in the notes on Andrew Marchand's article, while TNT will not get the best Big 12 games, guess what? There's not too many awful ones.
No.
I mean, yes, Arizona and Houston was against 2 teams that weren't in it. But for the most part, through the 16 teams in the league, you're not getting too many bad games. TNT wins there, but just to prove the point, the Big 12 is really good week in and week out. And now with Kansas State taking their 3rd loss, also all in conference, by the way.
Yeah.
Taking that 3rd loss, they're ostensibly out of the race, and that eliminates the top 5 teams that most of us had, which were Kansas State, Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Arizona. Yep. That was the top 5. And the bottom 5 that most people had included Arizona State, BYU, and Colorado.
Yep.
Because people thought that Colorado was all sizzle and no steak. And they've proven.
They flipped the script.
They've got steak.
Yeah.
They're steak. Absolutely. So now you've got Colorado, BYU, Arizona State, Iowa State now all rattling. And Iowa State at 4th is about probably where they should have been picked anyway. But you've got these 4 teams that are not anybody that anybody thought. Heck, Baylor's in 5th now in the league. Like, everything is upside down of where we thought it was going to be. So even if you're getting the 3rd or 4th best game every week, the one that's stuck on streaming, heck, that's a win for TNT.
Well, I also think it's a win for Big 12 fans because
it's a win for Big 12 fans because it's network.
Well, yeah, and like the product, we've seen a lot of you go over there, and it's great to be able to have those games to stream, especially like if you're on the go or you're out with your family or something, you can keep up with it on your phone. But at the same time, like, there's been some issues with the production quality and everything. So I think having more linear broadcasts, it also opens up more opportunities for other people to have opportunity to get into the field as well, doing production work and everything else. So I like it. I think it's a good move. I think it's only something that they can build on. I'm excited to see where they can take this, because that's going to make Brett Yormark come up with a bunch of creative ideas with his team to utilize that.
Yeah. Bracket Cat, I don't even care anymore, Paul. Big 12 is going to get screwed, so what does it even matter? Congrats on your P2 Invitational, Sankey and Patini. I can't wait to watch Avery ball out at A&M or Oregon next season.
I don't think he's leaving.
I don't think he's leaving. I don't think he is.
I don't think he's leaving.
Yeah, and look, I think part of it, though, was nobody knew what to think of Arizona State.
Oh.
And Kenny Dillingham is best, is one of the best quarterback coaches in the country. And if you really go through just his recent history, it is turning chicken.
Look at Bo Nix.
Chicken shit into chicken salad. Look, I'll tell you, Jordan Travis is no great shakes either, and he helped fix that. Bo Nix was good for one drive a game. Now he might win Rookie of the Year in the NFL. That is not because Sean Payton molded him out of clay. No. That's because Kenny Dillingham and Will Stein did the work.
Yes, they did.
On Bo Nix. Particularly, Kenny Dillingham has a hand in Bo Nix and Jordan Travis. And now, look, Sam Levitt, if you look at beginning of the year Sam Levitt to now Sam Levitt, he's getting better each and every week. That's Kenny Dillingham.
Yep.
And then when you have guys like Jordan Tyson, who no one knew about, who is a stud wide receiver, and then you have Cam Scatterbo, who we all knew about, but we're like, it's too bad he's on a team that's not that good.
Yeah.
No. He's helping them. I mean, he's a chain mover. He's ridiculous. I would not want to stand in front of him.
No.
It's absolutely insane. So Arizona State's in this thing. Look, BYU lost to Kansas the other night. That was bound to happen. There's only 2 undefeated teams left, and that's Army and Oregon. And we're likely to just have 1 or 2 at the end of every season anyway.
Right.
That's just how it's going to be. If you look at the SEC, Texas has 1 loss, but they could very easily get a second one, whether against A&M or in the conference title game. Not going to probably keep them out of the playoff, but if they lose to A&M, they might be out. Who knows how that's going to shake up with the SEC and what values over other, because the SEC now has a situation playoff-wise like the Big 12 did with Oregon or with Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas Tech that year, where one lost to one lost to the other.
Right.
Like, they all did that. Well, so Alabama beat Georgia, but lost to Vanderbilt and someone else. Georgia lost to Ole Miss, and they lost to Alabama. Ole Miss lost to LSU and Kentucky, which are both bad losses now. Tennessee lost to Arkansas and Georgia. A&M has lost to Notre Dame, who's a playoff team, so that has to come into consideration right now. And they lost to South Carolina, who's right now looking like a pretty salty team.
Oh, they're very salty.
So A&M still just has the 1 conference loss, though, so they're kind of sitting pretty when it comes to the championship game. Should they win against Auburn and Texas, they'll have a really good chance to be in that thing, depending on what else happens.
Right.
Especially since Texas would have 2 conference losses. They would only have 1. Alabama would have 2. Georgia would have 2. Ole Miss would have 2. So they would be in the conference title game because they'd only have 1 conference loss.
Right.
It would be them and Notre Dame. So that is just me spitballing off the top of my head of all of the things that could happen. And to just say, I think Oregon and Wisconsin showed you this week. I think Texas and Arkansas showed you this week that you just can't expect anymore a team to roll out and beat somebody that they should beat handily. Like sometimes it's going to be hard. There's so much emotion that goes into college football that especially for Texas and Texas A&M, to me, in my mind, that's a pick 'em game. Even though Texas has a better roster, they're better almost at every position than A&M is. Even though A&M's really good, they're better almost at every position. But that does not matter because that's the first time in 13 years that they will have played.
Yep.
And Kyle Field,
it's going to be insane.
It's going to be so loud, like buildings around are going to shake. It's going to be insane. So that is something you kind of have to throw it out the window of how this is going to go. And you know, I really do. I really do wonder how it's all going to shake out for the SEC. But this is what we all deserve. Like, this is what we deserve as college football fans. True parity, like breaking it down. Like, there are always going to be teams that have inherent advantages. Just like in professional sports, there's teams that have inherent advantages because they have richer owners.
Right.
You know, they have better owners. They have smarter owners. They have people who are more invested. Look, there was nothing going on with Washington in the NFL that couldn't be corrected by a good leadership group.
No, not at all.
Where clearly you can see now with Josh Harris and his people compared to Dan Snyder. There's nothing in college football that can't probably be corrected by a good leadership group. The only thing is that because there's no salary cap and revenue sharing, there's going to be skewed of what universities can do, you know, here and there. You know, different leagues have different TV contracts. It's not like the NFC and AFC have – well, the AFC has Patrick Mahomes, so they're going to get more money than the NFC this year because they don't have Patrick Mahomes. No. Like, that's not how it works. So, yeah, there's going to be imbalances, but it's going to be harder to run away, especially just because within your own conferences, you know, there's going to be guys who are like, well, you know, I was going to choose between Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, and LSU. Well, Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss have a quarterback at my position. LSU doesn't. So I'm just going to – like I was at Georgia for 1 year, but I've got two guys in front of me. Well, LSU just graduated a guy, and the other guy's not very good. So I'm going to go there, and I'll start there. Well, that means that, you know, everybody's got to kind of go back to the drawing board, and this guy who they thought was going to start when he was a junior is now starting when he's a redshirt freshman at LSU, and he's probably good. Like, all those things happen, and so we're getting the best parts of it right now. Now, look, there's still going to be consternation and anger, and Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are going to pull out every stop they can to make sure that they have a corner on this thing, and the Big 12 and ACC and everybody else is like, please, sir, can I have some more? Like, that's what it's going to be. But bottom line is, you know, this is my favorite college football season as a whole, maybe ever, because it's finally proving that there was a better way to do this and that everybody really does have a shot if you give it to them. And they were trying not to apply that logic to football, but the best thing that they were doing in the NCAA was the basketball tournament. And what do we like most about that? Is the first weekend. Well, I think the first weekend of the college football playoff is going to be the most fun weekend too.
I think it is as well. And it's like, as far as like this season and what we're seeing now, I think we kind of got a glimpse of it last year with how good the Pac-12 was and how Florida State had their opportunity to be there and should have been in. So I'm interested to see how it carries over. And I think this is going to be fun. This is the new landscape. I like it. My thing, as far as like the Big 12 this year, I'd be interested. I want to know the chat's perspective on this, because me and Jack were talking about this before the show. If Colorado and Arizona State make it to the Big 12 championship game, I think that would be phenomenal. I would love to see that. But Jack doesn't like this because he feels like, and this is a good point, if you're a Big 12 fan, do you want to see a traditional team in, or do you not want to give the Pac the pleasure of coming in and having two representatives in the first year, kind of like overshadowing the Big 12?
Okay, let me just say this. It's a different world now. I don't care if the Pac teams get to puff their chest out.
Right.
I'm for parity. So I'm for Arizona State that figured it out, and this is a better league for them to be in, I guess. I don't know. Like,
I don't think it's a better league. I think it's a better circumstance that they're in. Yeah.
It's a better circumstance for them. I do wonder, though, like, if the pack had held together and nobody leaves, like maybe Colorado would be doing this. Would Arizona State have to make decisions like this? Would they have been forced into, okay, what are we athletically? Because you found out, like, I don't know. Colorado may be the same thing. Like, if not for the breakup, do the schools that were also Rans, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah wasn't also ran, they were a conference champ, but those schools that were also Rans in the league, would it have made them face their actual reality? I don't know. And so I think part of that with Arizona State in particular is this Arizona State was not a school that wanted to join the Big 12.
No.
They and Utah in particular really wanted the Pac-12 to hold together. They're both presidents, both ADs were very adamant about the viability of the Pac-12 and moving that forward. But I also think that for Arizona State in particular, the collapse of the Pac-12 made you look at what you really are.
Right, yeah.
And so, okay, well, now that we have to go to this new league, let's make sure that we're viable.
Awesome.
And it's just the fact that you hired a guy already who's brilliant and an alum, and Kenny Dillingham has helped you out so much. And I wonder what a year of probably getting their teeth kicked in basketball will do.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Also
like,
think it helped force the hand and to show the poor leadership. And it made you have to address the poor leadership that you had.
We've been messing up. Like, yeah. So, you know, like if you just look at teams that like in the middle rung of the Big 12, like Texas Tech or whatever, who haven't won conference titles or competed for conference titles, they're close. Like nobody in Lubbock would trade Texas Tech's last 20 years for Arizona State's last 20 years.
No.
Not a chance. Arizona State would love to be Texas Tech. Now they lost to them this year too. I mean, so that notwithstanding, but
historic, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but I mean, like the last 20 years, would you want to be Texas Tech or Arizona State? I'd much rather be Texas Tech. I mean, they've won, they've contended. You know, Michael Crabtree, Mike Leach, like all those things. Yeah, Mahomes. Like even though they didn't win enough with the Mahomes, I'd rather much be Tech than Arizona State. And so if Arizona State's looking at that, like, well, how can Lubbock be a middle of the road team and we're less than that?
Yeah, right.
Like, how can they do that when we've got what we think are these advantages? Well, maybe because you're not using them the right way. Maybe because you don't have people who are as motivated as the people in Lubbock to show what they do. You know, look, I'll even take it to here. If you're Arizona State and you look at Baylor, that's won 3 conference titles and competed for several others in the last 15 years, and you've not really done that, I would be like, okay, well, how can they do that?
But we can't.
You know, all this time, USC wasn't really that good for the last, since Reggie Bush and Pete Carroll and all of them left. Like, they haven't been that good. They haven't been some insurmountable things. Washington's had their ups and downs. Really, the only team in the pack that was consistently good was Oregon. And then Utah comes in and starts, muscling people up. But if you look around the rest of that conference, I mean, Wazoo, okay, Oregon State, okay, but
Stanford was hit and miss.
Oregon was the alpha of the league for the last decade or so, and everybody else was kind of revolving around until Utah, climbed up the ladder there. So if you're Arizona State and you're looking at that, well, how couldn't we do that in this league where the teams aren't really that different outside of maybe, Nike University?
Right.
Because USC was faltering, much like in the Big 12, like Texas was faltering.
Yep.
So, look, if Texas didn't go to the SEC to the Big 12, would they still be making the same kind of decisions they were football-wise?
Probably not.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, probably not. Like, the change in leagues makes you look at who you really are. And to Texas's credit, they're like, well, we're not winning in the Big 12, and we're about to go to the SEC, so what do we need to do to do that? And they've hit the ground running. Oklahoma, I think, did that, but I think when they made the decision to go to the SEC, they were thinking Lincoln Riley's going to be our coach.
Right, absolutely.
Like, this is going to be fine. Lincoln Riley's here, and it was like, okay,
About
California. I appreciate it, guys. I do, but California. Yeah. So, there's a lot. I do think it makes you, really confront who you are. And, Arizona State's a program that made it, maybe not even willingly confronted who they were in hiring Kenny Dillingham and had a guy who can figure it out pretty quickly.
Yep.
But I do think it made them really think about who they are, because they were one of the schools that bought into we're worth $50 million a year, and no one told the Pac-12 you are not worth what you think you're worth.
Right.
You're worth what somebody's willing to pay you, and if that's what you think you're worth, then you're lucky.
So, all right, I just thought about something when we were discussing this because Kenny Dillingham is, to me, one of the – I think him, Dan Lanning, you probably throw Dion and Lane, like they get it. They're younger. They know how to, I think, adapt and get across to younger players where most coaches don't. Who do you think gets the contract extension first? Is it going to be Dillingham or is it going to be Dion? Because you know it's coming.
Yeah. Man. You know, it might be Dion because his agent might be able to float out like
Cowboys.
The Cowboys are open, which I don't know how viable that is. Part of me thinks
maybe
it
eventually, but not like now.
I don't know. I mean, look, if they somehow wound up, which they very well could, as bad as they are with the first pick in the draft, and Travis Hunter's out there, I would think that Dion would be a legit possibility. But if they have the 6th or 7th pick, which they're probably gonna the Cowboys are never gonna be bad enough to restart. Like it's always gonna be some kind of mid-rung reboot, Control-Alt-Delete nonsense. So I don't know. Like maybe he brings the swagger back to Dallas. Maybe he's the guy, but
I don't think anybody can.
I mean, look, I don't wish this on anyone, but he's in his 80s. Until Jerry Jones dies, we're not going to know what the Cowboys can really do without him above them. Because there was a time I thought, one of these days, because they've had some really, really elite teams, that they'll fall ass backwards into the NFC Championship game, where the rest of the league will kind of come back to the pack and they'll have a team that's just too good to lose. No.
Not happening.
Now I have no faith in that happening. He's yelling at people about windows and radio interviews, and he's full on he's full on old man now. So I don't know. I think Dillingham, I think you've got to give him one. Although there's not going to be some of those premier jobs open.
Right.
Look, Billy Napier gets to keep his job and beat LSU this week.
Yeah.
So
thanks.
Made him coach free and easy. It's also really easy to win when you've got your future stud quarterback in there and not.
I knew that was going to happen.
And not barely over a walk-on that they were playing. So, and like when he got Card off the field, I was like, well, that's it for Lagway for the year. So, anyway, but yeah, I don't know. So, Fight on Natty says, come on, Paul, to take the clown Dion as a series head coach. You got to be kidding me. The dude is a joke.
What?
The dude's 9-8-2 right now.
Coaching his ass off. He adjusted. I mean, he adapted to everything he needed to do.
Yeah, they've adapted. Their defense is playing well. Like, he's letting his coordinators coordinate. We'll see in the long term, but short term, right now.
And I wasn't sold on it. Like,
I wasn't either.
I've knocked it, but I'm telling you, like, given what he's done, like it's there. You can't just see it and not. I don't know, man. It speaks for itself.
And look, Clint Moses says check Dion's record versus ranked teams. All right. Well, he's only been a head coach for 2 years, what I know is his record is 8-2 right now. That's what I know. And what I know is that he could very well win the Big 12 and very well win a playoff game. Do I think that they have the running game or they're
not making a run towards a natty?
Like, they're not going to win the national championship, but could they get it to the playoff and maybe win a playoff game with the talent they have?
Maybe.
Yes.
The right matchup, yeah.
Yeah. It's all about matchup. So,
Do you think the Big 12 is going to get – do you think Boise gets in above a Big 12 team? Like, as far as the seeding? Because it's the highest ranked, right?
Yeah.
So do you think they're going to keep –
it depends on who it is, but probably not. Probably not. We'll see over the next couple of weeks how the rankings shake out. Boise State probably going to be 10th this week, though.
Probably, at least.
So maybe.
That's what I was just kind of keeping an eye on over the weekend, is especially once BYU went down and you started seeing things, it was kind of lining up to where we might be able to see that come into play. And that was just something to something to be mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, let's dive into some of the games this week that shook it up. Tennessee, Georgia caused a lot of confusion. We've talked about Arizona State and BYU, but we'll dive into that. This is 365 Sports.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina and Garrett Ross. And Garrett, let's talk a little bit more Big 12 because the league is very, very interesting.
Yep.
And you know they don't have maybe the logjam that's been cleared out a little bit that the SEC does right now, which I mean could be really chaotic. As a matter of fact, you know, people need Vandy like to beat Tennessee so that we can kind of clear that out. You know, Ole Miss needs to lose in the Egg Bowl, which is probably not going to happen. No. Alabama would need to lose in the Iron Bowl. Like those kind of things happen to get some clarity. But if those things do, like if a lot of those things do happen, if a bunch of the SEC teams take 3 losses, there's still going to be an SEC team that gets in over maybe even a 1-loss ACC team,
which is stupid. But
yeah. So, like if there's a 1-loss ACC team, because right now it's Clemson, Miami, SMU. None of them play each other the next 2 weeks. So if all of them have 1 loss and then one of them wins the title and the other one loses and has 2 losses and then the other one's sitting there with 1 loss, unless it's Clemson. Yeah. And even then, like Clemson has not.
But they haven't played anytime
Clemson has 2 losses.
Been
I'm sorry. Clemson has 2 losses. So, yeah. But, yeah. So, I don't know. But looking at this last week, Baylor winning in Morgantown, I know that like the rest of the college football world may not realize how big a deal it is for Baylor to finally win there, but to finally beat TCU at a big spot when they needed to was a huge thing, and then to finally beat West Virginia in Morgantown, which cost them a shot at the playoff in 2014, inexplicably. That's like one of the first things that said none of this makes sense, but yeah, that was huge. And here are the things that happened because of that game. Baylor got bowl eligible. They were 2-4 6 weeks ago. And then between 4 games and 2 byes have turned into a team that can beat anybody that lines up against them right now. Sochier Robertson became a stud quarterback. Dave Aranda is now solidified and not going anywhere, which is good news. Like, I know there were some people who wanted him gone before the year started. I
think he's the perfect guy for the job.
Letting him find where he needed to be and what he was doing wrong and letting him correct that has proven to be a boon for Baylor, not only on the field, but now they don't have to pay a $20+ million buyout and start all over again.
And they also don't have to worry about losing that recruiting class, which is stacked.
Yeah, and the other thing is bringing in Keenan Hall and Jake Spavital and some of the guys they brought in are really good recruiters. Now, it's going to be incumbent upon them to keep those guys on staff, which is going to be really, really hard. But
I think you can keep them at least a couple of years.
I think so. But again, like they're going to be in demand.
Oh yeah,
you know, for open coordinator positions. But like that was a huge thing, and it was another loss in Morgantown where they gave up a ton of points, and Neil Brown now just took his 5th loss. They're 5-5. They have UCF and at Tech.
That's not easy. Either one of those.
It's not easy. Like, look, UCF I know has been a bit of a disaster, but who's got the emotions right now? And look, I kind of feel bad. I feel bad for West Virginia in that Garrett Green played pretty well. It looked like the Garrett Green that we know, but their defense couldn't stop Baylor at all. And then you've got to go to Lubbock that last week of the season when you might be 5-6 and playing for a bowl game. It's not a place in an offense I want to face.
No, and I don't think if you have to go into Lubbock to become bowl eligible, you can just kiss it goodbye. I do not see them being able to, and I know Texas Tech has shown that they're vulnerable at home at times this season, but I don't think I would trust Neil Brown in that situation to go in and have to get that done. I think you need to find a way, if you're West Virginia, to get it done this weekend to become bowl eligible, because if you don't, I don't see it happening this season.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't. I think that I think it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for them to claw back out of it, and that's a job. Like, if you want to tell me a job that I can legitimately see a coach getting fired, I'll tell you, of the 16 jobs in the Big 12, Willie Fritz isn't going anywhere.
No.
Lance Leipold's not going anywhere. Kalani Sitake's not going anywhere. Kai Whittingham may retire, but they already have a head coach, so that job's not even really open. Dion probably not going anywhere. If that job's open,
think he's
something
staying.
Crazy's happened. Dave Aranda not going anywhere. Scott Satterfield not going anywhere. Matt Campbell not going anywhere. And that just basically leaves Arizona,
Gus,
and Brent Brennan. Yeah, Gus probably not going anywhere this year, but Gus will be put on notice.
Right, yeah.
But that leaves Brent Brennan in the kind of, this just didn't work out, let's cut bait before we go, because they know there's no way. Like, I'll tell you right now, if Noah Fafita is back at Arizona, that is a miracle.
I don't think he's coming back.
Tyrone
No.
McMillan's a top 5 pick. Like, you're losing him. Like, Noah Fafita can put himself in the transfer portal and make almost $2 million. So, I think that's kind of a wrap to me. So if you're going to let him get, the only reason you would keep Brent Brennan is what the hell?
Right.
Let's just see what he can do. And I like Brent Brennan, but he may not be the guy. And Jason Shears reported several times, it's not going well for him there. It's not going great, but they did get the win over Houston this week. And so that buys them another week, obviously. And look, they're 4-6. They got to win the last 2 to make a bowl. So we'll see what happens when that all goes down. But yeah, Chris Kleiman's not going anywhere. All those things are solid. There's not a lot of guys going anywhere
across
else.
the board, yeah.
But Mac Brown might retire. I can see Lincoln Riley doing something crazy. But I don't know. It may not be the right time. But if the Bears just go, look, the best we can get out of Caleb Williams is Lincoln Riley, even though he hasn't been good there. Maybe it's time. Maybe he'll be a good, let's hire him, because we don't want to waste this talent that we have at quarterback, the first really talented quarterback they've had in 50 years. And so there's not going to be a lot of positions open, but West Virginia is one that every time they give up 49 points at home and lose at home, I just see Ren Baker not being able to have the support within the university for him to bring Neil Brown back.
No, and he's had to deal with a lot of adversity since taking that job and make some tough decisions. And I don't think he necessarily wants to fire Neil Brown, but this might be a situation where his hand is forced at the end of the year, especially if they can't find a win in the next 2 games. I think you got to let him go, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there's. Hands are going to get forced in a situation like that, especially if they're 5-7. Then you've got a 4-game drop off, a 4-win drop off from a year ago. West Virginia is one where I can see okay, and Neil Brown wasn't Ren Baker's guy. He didn't bring him in.
What about TCU? Do you think? Because I know a couple weeks back we were talking. You think they're good now?
Right. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to keep Josh Hoover if you let Sonny Dykes go.
No, not at all.
He might have to make some, I would say, minor staff changes, but nothing wholesale.
Right.
Phil
You've
Longo
already
got
changed
let
defensive
go
coordinators once. So
What?
You've already changed your defensive coordinator once. So
Yeah. So I don't think the offensive coordinator is the problem. They just got to get better running the ball, and they seem to figure that out, with Savion Williams right now. But that's more of an off-season thing for them. But I mean, who's getting let go in the SEC? It's not going to be Brian Kelly, not right away.
No, I mean, with Napier already being shored up,
Napier's shored up.
I don't know where you would. Pittman saved his job. Levy's got plenty of time. This is first year.
Oh, yeah, first year, quarterback got hurt. I mean,
I think everybody's good.
Yeah.
I mean, barring. I mean, I think Auburn probably give Hugh Freeze one more year, but that would be one maybe to monitor. But does somebody come after? Here's the thing: if somebody comes after Drinkowitz, then maybe Mizzou would open up. But that's going to have to be.
But who's coming after him?
That's the thing, though. Is who's going to
who's coming after him? I mean,
I don't know.
I don't think Venables is getting the two coaches from legacy programs that I think in the country, blue bloods or whatever you want to call them, FSU and Oklahoma. Oklahoma's bluer blood. Don't get me wrong here, but those two coaches aren't going anywhere this year. They're going to be given a chance to fix it, and they're going to spend a ton of money trying to fix it. And then we'll see what happens. But the Big Ten, Purdue's probably going to be open. But, Purdue's not going to go hire Eli Drinkwitz away from Missouri.
No.
So, I mean, there's not going to be a lot open. Now, there might be something open. Nobody, say Jamie Chadwell gets North Carolina, which I think would be an excellent hire. I'm Jamie Chadwell fan club. So, I don't know. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of turnover, but West Virginia, that's the one in the Big 12 that if you had to say, what job will definitely change, I would say that one. I don't even think definitely, but I do think that there's a good shot because, I mean, this year has just gone so poorly for them.
Yeah. If they do, if West Virginia was to make a coaching hire, do you think they would stick? Because we see it happen every time, right? You go the total opposite route. So the last hire, and I know that Wren didn't make the hire, but you went lower down, bringing Neil Brown from Troy at the time. Do you think you would go big name, try to stay up, or would you take a swing at a John Summerall and try to get him from Tulane and try to take that same path?
I would. I don't know. Ironically, he was also the head coach at Troy.
I know. It's weird.
Would I take a swing at John Summerall? Maybe. Would I take a swing at Jamie Chadwell? Maybe. I mean, West Virginia is not going to be if Florida was going to be open, Florida was going to have maybe the cachet to go get Lane Kiffin away from Ole Miss, right?
Yeah.
Or hire someone like that. I don't think West Virginia, as good a job it is a really good job.
It's a really good job.
I mean, first of all, you've got a super engaged president that understands sports. You've got a really good athletic director that will support you. You've got a fan base that loves their sports, loves them. You name it, they love it. Men's basketball, women's basketball, whatever, they love it. So you've got fans that are invested. You're not going to have to really push too hard, I think, for a little bit of a bump in NIL investment because they've shown they're willing to do that, especially with basketball and what they're doing there. And in fact, basketball wouldn't be in this in a reboot type situation, rebuild situation, if not for the personal problems of their Hall of Fame level coach. That had. I mean, Bob Huggins had personal problems. This is what happened.
Correct.
But now they've got a new basketball coach. Things are looking up there. Yeah, I think part of it is if you're Ren Baker, you've got to keep fundraising up and all this. And if you can't get people excited about football, then you have to make a change. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a place that you would want to go. I just don't know if they could just go and pluck somebody from, they can't go hire Eli Drinkwitz.
Right, yeah.
Being in the SEC is just more valuable than it is being in the Big 12 because of,
the
reasons.
Financial gap.
So,
now.
there's a bunch of guys who are going to be on notice next year. Gus Malzahn, Mike Gundy, I could see retiring after the year if they don't right the ship, because this was such a drop for them. I can see other people retiring, but like when you talk about next year, who's on notice, like Norvell's on notice, Gus Malzahn's on notice. If Neil Brown comes back, he's definitely on notice. If Brent Brennan comes back, he's on. Like, there's a bunch of guys that are on notice, but also with the 12-team playoff, now you've got more weeks where you might even just wanting to get a coordinator are going to be harder. Like if I want to hire Glenn Schumann from Georgia,
you have to wait it out.
Might be a little bit harder for me to get him away. And like, okay, if I'm West Virginia, like, you know, the other thing is they think, well, Jimbo Fisher is going to throw his hat in the ring for that job.
I do that.
I don't know if you want to do that.
I wouldn't.
I mean, maybe Jimbo's changed in this year off.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet he has.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then April begins revenue sharing, so the whole thing's going to change.
Totally different.
So do you want to maybe pause at all that, and then next year when they know what the first year of revenue sharing looks like and where money has to be pointed in whatever direction, like then you might see a culling of the herd. But Kim, thank you. Great point.
Yep, that's a great
on that
point.
one. Yeah, revenue sharing starts in April, so we don't even know how that affects it. All right, that's going to do it for us. Payton Sochier, rankings right now. Coming up after this today on the show, we've got Ari Temkin. We've got Mark Schipper. We have Fifth Down College Football. We have JJ Joe, Baylor radio color analyst, and the legendary Phil Bennett and our Big 12 South Pod, the top 5. So much coming up, a lot to get to. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports on our own channel. Now here's Payton Sochier, our Chief Rankings Officer from rankingsrightnow.com.
Everyone, Chief Rankings Officer Payton Sochier here on the Triple Option with Paul Catalina. We had a crazy Week 12 of college football that the playoff committee is going to have to try and ingest everything and understand what in the world are we going to start ranking all these different types of teams. So let's take a dive on into rankingsrightnow.com, where we have a machine learning algorithm to help us guide where the selection committee is going to be ranking these teams. Sign up for our newsletter, create your free login. But here we are on the top 25. Let's start with who are the teams that are projected to fall out of the top 25. We had Mizzou lose to South Carolina. We had Louisville losing to Stanford of all teams. We had Washington State losing to New Mexico of all teams. And we had LSU falling hard at the very end of their game. So where does this start to bring in everything for how the rankings are going to shape up? Let's really dive in and focus in on this 16 through 25 section right here. If we actually start at 17, we are going to have a bunch of people that say, well, why didn't CU move up in the rankings? They destroyed Utah. Travis Hunter looked amazing. Yes, but Utah is not the same juggernaut that we thought they were at the beginning of the year. Clemson just beat Pitt on the road with a great 50-yard touchdown to win the game. That road win against Pitt that started the year off 7-0 was recently ranked is probably a better win on paper than Colorado's win against Utah. So according to the algorithm, Clemson is going to be ahead of Colorado. Do we think that's actually going to be the case? I don't know. I could see both those teams flip-flopping, right? But according to how they voted in the past, this is where the algorithm believes Clemson will be just ahead of Colorado. And maybe they let the selection committee think, well, we're just going to let the Colorado, BYU, Arizona State, we're going to let them all just settle it out. And it really doesn't matter where we rank them right now. So maybe moving Clemson a little bit higher is the main priority there. Then we have South Carolina moving up 3 spots after beating Mizzou. You have Tulane, who absolutely waxed Navy 35-0 on their home turf. So that's a big jump for Tulane. I think a lot of people are really starting to take them much more seriously here in the last 2 weeks. Arizona State beats Kansas State. They're now into what the projection is number 20. That's a big jump from someone who was not ranked last weekend. So they've had an up and down last few weeks, but as of right now, the selection committee is going to have to take them very seriously now with a legitimate ranked win under their belt. Army had the weekend off. Kansas State, as we just mentioned, lost to Arizona State. And now you have James Madison and Iowa State that were floating around in that 25 to 32 area. They haven't been ranked. Iowa State was ranked a few weeks ago, but now Iowa State had a big win against Cincinnati. So now here's what we're thinking. We think James Madison and Iowa State, UNLV are the last teams that are going to be coming in. The AP poll yesterday had Iowa State and UNLV both in the top 25. So I wouldn't be surprised if the playoff committee is also leaning that way. But you also still have these teams like Missouri, Louisville, Washington State, LSU that could all creep back in to those bottom tier 23, 24, 25 rankings. So a ton of information that we should all be paying attention to. Go to rankings right now. Play with the what if simulation tool. You can see what would have happened if Louisville doesn't blow it at the very end with bad penalties to lead to a field goal with Stanford. Where would they be ranked, right? Play around, have some fun. We're going to be here all week talking about all of the projected rankings, and once they release their rankings on Tuesday night, where we go from there. I am Chief Rankings Officer Payton Sochier here on the Triple Option with Paul Catalina.